Happy Monday. Welcome to the Liz Wheeler Show. I'm your host, Liz Wheeler. We have a great show for you lined up today. Hey, let's start with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky did not show up to the White House in a t-shirt. There's a win for the beginning of your week. This is Zelensky being greeted by President Trump. Take a look at this outfit, though. Look at what Zelensky decided to wear after he was ragged so badly and so deservedly in February for coming to the White House. Looked like he was about to go to the gym. This is what he wore today. Take a look. No, not this one. This is what he wore before. So he actually did wear a t-shirt, funnily enough, to a meeting with, I think that's Keith Kellogg from the Trump administration. He met with Keith Kellogg first, and he wore a t-shirt. But then when he pulled up to the White House and President Trump greeted him, this is what he wore. Go ahead and play this, because check out this outfit. Take a load of this outfit. Okay, he's getting out of the car now. President Trump's standing there to greet him. Marine opens the door. Out of the car steps short little Zelensky. He's greeted by Trump. Trump looks like he's greeting a child. They turn around together, and this is the outfit that Zelensky chose to wear to the White House. What is that outfit? Like, what is that? It looks like he borrowed his dad's old rain jacket. Or maybe he stopped by Kohl's on the way to the White House to grab what they had on sale. He is definitely not cool enough to pull off black on black without a tie. He looks like he works at TGI Fridays. However, in his own mind, he upgraded his outfit because at the beginning of the show, that video that you got a clip of, you can play it now, Spence. He met with Keith Kellogg out in Washington, D.C. Zelensky did before he went to talk to President Trump, and he was wearing a t-shirt at that meeting. He was wearing a t-shirt. This man, I mean, mark my words when I say he is an actor. This person is not a serious world leader. He has the entire world gripped by the throat, holding us hostage, and yet all he is a despicable, corrupt actor. All that being said, he's meeting right now with President Trump at the White House. If any Oval Office boxing matches break out as they did in February, we will bring it to you live. But in the meantime, we're going to talk about James Comey. James Comey, former FBI director, is an absolute freak. Did you see his video? Fanboying, just drooling over Taylor Swift. It is one of the weirdest things you've ever seen. And we're going to talk about exactly why James Comey released this video. Also happening right now as we speak, former Attorney General Bill Barr is testifying behind closed doors to the House Oversight Committee about Jeffrey Epstein. And we hope he's being asked questions about his knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein's ties to the intelligence community. It's a very interesting connection that former Attorney General Bill Barr has to Jeffrey Epstein. We're going to go through exactly what questions should be asked to former Attorney General Barr and just untangle a little bit this very intricate web between Barr and Epstein. Today's episode is proudly sponsored by All Family Pharmacy. Are you tired of the doctors telling you no, you can't get prescriptions for affordable off-patent medications, or insurance won't cover what actually works for you? Well, if this is you, you are not alone. Millions are frustrated with our broken healthcare system. All Family Pharmacy is your solution. It's a patient-first, independent pharmacy. They connect you with licensed U.S. doctors who approve your prescriptions online. It's fast and it's legal. There's no gatekeeping, no insurance middleman, no red tape. They offer affordable, high-demand medications that are often hard to access due to political gatekeeping. I'm talking ivermectin, starting at just $2, medbendazole, hydroxychloroquine, antibiotics, NAD, you name it. They have over 200 different medication options. You order online, it takes just minutes. A licensed doctor reviews and approves your prescription. Medications then ship straight to your door. No clinic visits, no hassle. Everything is secure, HIPAA compliant, and pharmacist reviewed. You choose the medication, not an insurance company or a scared physician. Real healthcare freedom means you decide what's right for your body. Transparent pricing. No surprise bills, trusted by thousands of Americans who are taking control of their health. It's time to put your medical freedom back in your hands. Visit allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz. And because you are an integral part of the MAHA movement, use code Liz10 at checkout for an exclusive discount. It's your health. It should be your choice. No more waiting. That's allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz, code Liz10. All right. As we speak, as of this morning, former Attorney General Bill Barr, who you remember served as Attorney General twice, once during the first Trump administration, once during the administration of George H.W. Bush, former Attorney General Bill Barr entered Congress to give testimony to the House Oversight Committee. Now, frustratingly, this testimony was behind closed doors. We don't have access to the video of the questions that Attorney General Bill Barr was asked, or the answers that he gave, or the questions that he wasn't asked. We don't have access to that. But what is Attorney General Bill Barr's connection to Jeffrey Epstein? He's not the first person you think of when you think of Jeffrey Epstein's cronies, and yet the associations between Bill Barr and Jeffrey Epstein are significant. So let's start with Bill Barr himself. Bill Barr, as a young man, started not just as a practicing attorney, not at the Department of Justice, where you and I are most familiar with his work. Bill Barr started his work in the federal government at the CIA. So it's safe to say that he was intelligence from the beginning. He was part of the intelligence apparatus, part of the intelligence community. And suffice to say, once you're in the intelligence community, you are always connected with that community, whether you're on the inside or the outside. Now, Bill Barr's connection to the intelligence community wasn't just due to his experience at the CIA. His father was passed down from his family. Bill Barr's father, Donald Barr, was also CIA. In fact, Donald Barr was CIA before the CIA was the CIA. His father, Donald, was part of the OSS, which was the precursor, the intelligence apparatus that was the precursor to the CIA. So it runs in the family. Now, his father, Bill Barr's father, Donald Barr, is an integral part of the connection between Bill Barr and Jeffrey Epstein, because it was Bill Barr's father, Donald, who hired Jeffrey Epstein as a math teacher once upon a time. So there was a familial connection between Bill Barr and Jeffrey Epstein through Barr's father, Donald. And this is important to understand because a personal familial connection can provide a conflict of interest when it comes to then your professional association, Bill Barr's professional association with Jeffrey Epstein. So fast forward a few years and Bill Barr becomes part of the Department of Justice. He, of course, was not the Attorney General immediately, but he fairly quickly worked his way up through the ranks of the Department of Justice to significant roles. You'll remember that Bill Barr was the Attorney General when Jeffrey Epstein died in 2019. The Department of Justice, of course, oversees the Bureau of Prisons. So the buck stops with Bill Barr over the lax security that allowed Jeffrey Epstein to die. However, Jeffrey Epstein may have died. Obviously, we've covered that at length in other episodes. If you want to know my opinion on whether he died or whether he was killed, please search The Liz Wheeler Show and Jeffrey Epstein and watch the episode where a forensic toxicologist and pathologist shows us pictures of Jeffrey Epstein's autopsy, traces the marks on Jeffrey Epstein's body, and points out the anomalies with the marks that existed on Jeffrey Epstein's body versus the narrative we were given by Bill Barr's Department of Justice. Okay, so in addition to Bill Barr being Attorney General when Epstein died in 2019, Bill Barr was also a high-ranking Department of Justice official during the Ronald Reagan administration. Now, why does this matter? That was a long time ago. Well, as you know, one of the scandals that became part of the legacy of Ronald Reagan's administration was the Iran-Contra scandal. The Iran-Contra scandal was supposed to be, at least in the eyes of the Reagan administration, a secret. The Iran-Contra scandal took place at a time when there was an embargo for the United States to sell arms or weapons of any kind to Iran. We weren't allowed to do it. It was against the law. Our country was not allowed to give arms to Iran. And yet, under the table, off the record, in secret, hidden from the eyes of the American people and hidden from Congress, the Reagan administration and high-ranking officials in the Reagan administration, like the highest ranking officials in the Reagan administration, sold arms to Iran. Arms in exchange for the hostages, the American hostages that Iran had taken. Now, the money that they profited from selling these arms to Iran was also used for nefarious purposes. That money was given to Nicaraguan rebels at a time when that was also illegal for the Reagan administration to give money to the Nicaraguan rebels. Well, eventually, this secret undercover plot that arguably violated the law in multiple ways came to light. It was actually reported on by a foreign journalist that the U.S. was giving arms to Iran, and thus it became not just a domestic scandal for Ronald Reagan, but an international scandal. Now, here's the important part. The way that Iran-Contra was brokered was not through direct negotiation with the Iranian government or between the U.S. government and the Iranian government. In fact, the U.S. government during Iran-Contra wanted to make it appear that their hands were clean. They wanted plausible deniability. They wanted this deal brokered by off the books, off the record intermediaries, people who weren't official, federal government employees, who weren't politicians, who weren't technically part of the Reagan administration, but who were doing the work that the Reagan administration wanted them to do. And the intermediaries that were used to broker the Iran-Contra deals were shady people. These were people like Adnan Khashoggi, who was a Saudi arms dealer, but he had the connections to broker a deal between the U.S. government and the Iranian government in undercover in the dark of night. We'll get to Adnan Khashoggi in a minute and his ties to Jeffrey Epstein. So let's go back to former Attorney General Bill Barr for a moment. Now, during the Iran-Contra scandal, Attorney General Bill Barr was part of the Department of Justice. After the Reagan administration, and you'll remember the vice president during the Reagan administration was George H.W. Bush. So fast forward then to George H.W. Bush as president. He was elected after Ronald Reagan left office for one term. Bill Barr was the attorney general for H.W. Bush. And it was Bill Barr who recommended to then President H.W. Bush that Bush, on his way out of office, so at the conclusion of his 4 years in the Oval Office, that he issue pardons, 5 pardons for the high-ranking Reagan administration officials who were convicted of breaking the law during the Iran-Contra scandal. Now, the significance of this is that when the Iran-Contra scandal was exposed, there was an independent counsel, a special prosecutor that was appointed to investigate the Iran-Contra scandal. Who was involved? What was done? What laws were broken? You're, of course, familiar with the concept of a special prosecutor, these independent investigations. This particular investigation, this special prosecutor had conducted a 6 years long investigation into Iran-Contra. And that 6 years long investigation came to an abrupt halt when President H.W. Bush did issue pardons for these top Reagan administration officials on H.W.'s way out of the White House. And again, what was the reason that who was behind those pardons? Well, it was Bill Barr. And so Bill Barr became known as the mop-up man for the CIA, because if the independent investigation, the special prosecutor's investigation had become public, well, it would not have reflected well on the intelligence community, because much of the Iran-Contra scandal was run through the CIA, by the CIA, or through intermediaries and liaisons off the books of the CIA. And by encouraging H.W. Bush to pardon the Reagan administration officials who'd been convicted in Iran-Contra, Bill Barr effectively swept the entirety of all the details of Iran-Contra under the rug for good. The CIA was off the hook. Now, let me pause there for just a second. Defenders of Bill Barr will tell you that Bill Barr is being unfairly attacked and unfairly accused of being a cover-up man for the CIA. They'll tell you Bill Barr has long held a theory, a legal theory, he is an attorney after all, that says that the president of the United States has almost unlimited unilateral authority to conduct foreign policy. And that's actually why President Trump picked Bill Barr to be attorney general during his first term, because he wanted an attorney general who held this view that it's the president and not Congress who has the right to conduct foreign policy, that the president doesn't need the permission of Congress to conduct foreign policy actions. And defenders of Bill Barr will tell you that even back when Bill Barr recommended to H.W. Bush that he pardon these Reagan officials who were convicted for Iran-Contra, he was just exercising his belief that it's the president's unilateral discretion to conduct foreign policy and that Congress had no legal authority to be involved in the first place. That's what his defenders will tell you. But perhaps his history with the intelligence community tells a little bit of a different story. That's what we should find out today if the congressional testimony that he's giving right now were not behind closed doors. So let's go back to these CIA intermediaries for a moment. These off-the-books liaisons that work with the intelligence communities, the apparatus of the United States, and with other intelligence communities around the world. One of the individuals who was used as an intermediary, this is not speculation, this is not a theory, this is an established fact. One of the intermediaries that was used during the Iran-Contra scandal was a man named Adnan Khashoggi. Adnan Khashoggi was an arms dealer from Saudi Arabia. He's kind of shady. Arms dealers from the Middle East tend to be. Adnan Khashoggi was not just shady in and of himself, he was a client of Jeffrey Epstein. So suddenly, we have Jeffrey Epstein popping up, connected not just to the intermediary of the Iran-Contra scandal, but also with a familial connection to Bill Barr, the man who effectively ended the investigation into Iran-Contra. Fast forward to 2020. The Department of Justice, under the helm of Attorney General Bill Barr, because he was the Attorney General again, as you know, during the first Trump administration, in 2020, following the death of Jeffrey Epstein in prison, while Bill Barr was the head of the Department of Justice, which oversees the Bureau of Prisons, the Department of Justice is investigating Alex Acosta. Alex Acosta is the former U.S. attorney who cut the sweetheart deal for Jeffrey Epstein, the non-prosecution agreement for Jeffrey Epstein back in 2007. And it was during that investigation that Bill Barr's Department of Justice reportedly, we haven't seen the transcript, even though there's one woman who has the power and the authority to declassify that transcript and give it to us so that we can know what was asked during this interview. It was during that interview, that investigation into Alex Acosta, that the Department of Justice OPR, Office of Professional Responsibility, asked Alex Acosta, or reportedly asked Alex Acosta about Jeffrey Epstein, about this deal, why he cut this sweetheart deal instead of bringing federal charges against Epstein. And reportedly, Alex Acosta replied, "I was told to back off of Epstein because Epstein belonged to intelligence." That's what the reports tell us that Acosta said during that interview. We don't know what the question was. We don't know what other questions were asked. We don't know what else Acosta said. We don't know what questions were left on the table. We don't know who formulated those questions. But here's the interesting part. So now today, in the United States Congress, in front of the House Oversight Committee, which is chaired by Representative James Comer, you also have Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Democrat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett on the House Oversight Committee. You have a closed-door deposition of Bill Barr to try to untangle some of these outstanding questions about Jeffrey Epstein. And the major question that needs to be answered in today's deposition is, what was Bill Barr's role at the Department of Justice in covering up Jeffrey Epstein's ties to intelligence? And the reason that question is phrased in that way is because circumstantial evidence would lead us to believe that Jeffrey Epstein was tied to intelligence. We had Mike Benz on the show about a month ago, untangling what Jeffrey Epstein's role or relation to intelligence actually was. There are a lot of theories out there about what Jeffrey Epstein did to intelligence, and Mike Benz's theory essentially posits that Jeffrey Epstein also played a role like Adnan Khashoggi. He was a financier. He was a liaison. He was connected to very rich, very powerful individuals in the private sector and in governments all around the world. And that Jeffrey Epstein's role in the intelligence, and Mike Benn said it's very important to note the phrase that Alex Acosta reportedly used in that interview, that Epstein belonged to intelligence. Not that he was an asset, not that he worked for, not that he was an employee of, not that he was an informant for, but that he belonged to intelligence. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean that Mike Benz's theory is correct, that Epstein was also a liaison, was also an intermediary off the books in deals like Iran-Contra or other deals that maybe you and I don't even know about? If there's one person who would know, it would be Bill Barr. Because remember, it was Bill Barr's father, Donald Barr, who worked for the CIA. And before he worked for the CIA, he worked for the OSS, the precursor of the CIA. He then hired Jeffrey Epstein as a math teacher and reportedly made introductions to Jeffrey Epstein to his intelligence community network. Bill Barr needs to be asked, is this report accurate? Did Bill Barr's father make intelligence introductions between Jeffrey Epstein and his network? Did Bill Barr make any such introductions? If so, who was Jeffrey Epstein introduced to and when? Did Bill Barr block any questions in the Alex Acosta interview about Epstein's intelligence ties? Did he influence any questions that were asked? Or maybe questions that were left unasked? Was he aware of any ties between Jeffrey Epstein and any intelligence apparatus, either here in the United States or abroad? Was he aware of any Jeffrey Epstein role in Iran-Contra as an intermediary or in any other off-the-record, off-the-books capacity? And if so, what? These are the questions that the House Intelligence Committee needs to ask Bill Barr. Because if there's a man that's in a position to know almost from the beginning of when Jeffrey Epstein's public life began to overlap with the intelligence community, it would be Bill Barr. And Bill Barr has a familial connection to Jeffrey Epstein. Did that impact any of his professional decisions when he was at the Department of Justice? Because familial connections typically mean that there could be a conflict of interest in making a professional decision about an individual. And here's my question for the House Oversight Committee as well. Why isn't on that list that the House Oversight Committee released, I believe it was early last week, or it might have been the prior week, 2 weeks ago, they released a list of all the individuals that they were subpoenaing. They're going to bring them in front of the House Oversight Committee and they're going to question them about Jeffrey Epstein. Why isn't Alex Acosta on that list? Because Alex Acosta seems to be in a unique position to answer questions. And Alex Acosta seems surprisingly absent from these public conversations. If there's an individual who has knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein's ties to the intelligence community, then that individual should be questioned under oath. And the only confirmed report of an individual in the United States government stating with certainty that, yes, Jeffrey Epstein did have an association with intelligence, the only person on record, or at least reportedly on record, confirming that is Alex Acosta. So my question to the House Oversight Committee, to Chairman Comer and the rest of the members, is why haven't you subpoenaed Alex Acosta? And where is Alex Acosta? I don't understand why some of these individuals who know things about really pivotal scandals in our country Alex Acosta about Epstein, and this also applies to former Congressman Nunes and Russiagate. Why do they disappear? If you know information that's pertinent to untangling scandals and bringing justice for crimes that were committed, especially crimes that were committed by the government against the people, why do these men disappear? Why aren't they speaking out? You'd think that they would be in a rush to reveal this information. And if it's classified information, then why aren't they strategically leaking it? I don't get this. This is a very shady aspect of the federal government. You know, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, that I require facts and evidence to substantiate my theories or even my conjecture. I lay out the algorithm that I'm using to build conjecture. But when men like Alex Acosta, or even to a certain extent, Devin Nunes, when they disappear with what seems to be knowledge of pivotal information, it really does make me wonder, are they being threatened? Because otherwise, why wouldn't you bring to the forefront information that could help execute justice? And of course, as it seems this year, all paths lead back to the current Attorney General, Pam Bondi. Attorney General Bondi, you have the authority as the Attorney General to declassify that Alex Acosta interview with the Department of Justice, OPR. Why won't you do that? Why won't you give to us the transparency that you promised on the front of that Epstein binder you handed to me that day in the White House? Why won't you let us read the questions that were asked of Alex Acosta and his answers? This seems to be something that would be easy to do and would reveal nothing about the victims you claim to want to champion. It's just transparency. So why haven't you done this? Now, speaking of shady Department of Justice characters, I'm not sure you'll find a shadier Department of Justice character than James Comey. I am about to show you a video that you're going to think is AI. You are not going to believe this is real. Did you guys see the James Comey video about Taylor Swift? When I tell you this is the weirdest video that you'll see all day, it's not just weird because James Comey has Trump derangement syndrome. Like, this is a deeply creepy video. And James Comey, of course, he's a weirdo and he's corrupt. He's not stupid like many government employees often are. He only does things, opens his mouth, goes on the media, takes action, posts on social media, if it's part of a larger strategic plot. So what is James Comey doing with this video? We're going to break it down here in just a moment, but I want to give a shout out to another sponsor of today's show, Crowd Health. What if you could get your health care for under $100? Now, you've heard me talk a lot about Crowd Health on the show because my husband and I quit our health insurance and joined Crowd Health because health insurance is a scam. And I want to tell you about something new that Crowd Health has just introduced. You can finally rid yourself of the bureaucracy of the healthcare system and take agency over your own health. Crowd Health has just introduced the Black Swan membership. It's the healthcare alternative for people who want autonomy over their care, their costs, and their lifestyle. They just need a little help with the Black Swan events that do happen in our lives. For just $95 a month, you get access to a team of health bill negotiators, low-cost prescription and lab testing tools, and a database of low-cost but high-quality doctors vetted by Crowd Health. You stay in control without insurance and their networks dictating your care. And what if something major does happen to you or a member of your family? Well, you pay the first $15,000 and then the Crowd steps in to help fund the rest. It feels like the options we used to have before Obamacare messed everything up. And if you use my promo code Liz, it's only $80 for the first 3 months. Visit joincrowdhealth.com, use promo code Liz, and you'll see what I saw, that there are better ways to secure your family against expensive health events. Get rid of health insurance. The mandatory disclaimer here is that crowd health is not insurance. I personally like to call it assurance. Opt out. Take your power back. This is how we win. All right. The weirdest video that I've seen in a long time, and that's saying a lot because I see a lot of weird videos being in political media. Former FBI director James Comey apparently has a Substack. He's trying to make money. You know, he just released a book a couple of months ago. He's trying to cash out on his government service. James Comey released a 5-minute fanboy rant is the only word I can use to describe it, about Taylor Swift. You got to watch this. Take a look.
Taylor Swift has grown up with my family and provided us a soundtrack, really, as we've grown ourselves and learned and adapted and dealt with adversity and celebration. She had songs for all of it. I suspect that's something that millions of Americans have also experienced in their families. I think that's because Taylor Swift produces great art, but also because she models something. At every stage of her career, she's shown a certain way of being that resonated with my kids and also felt right to me as a parent. And she's still doing that as a grown-up. Like a lot of you, I struggle with how to stand up to bullies without letting their meanness infect me and change me. You may have seen that the governor of California has been generating a lot of attention lately by posting on social media in a satirical way where he mocks Donald Trump and his all-caps megalomania and his absurdity. And I find it very funny, hilarious even sometimes. But I gotta be honest, it also leaves me with a strange feeling at times because I don't want us to become like Trump and his followers. There are far more decent, honest, kind people in America than there are mean jerks. And don't get me wrong, we have our jerks, millions of them, you may have noticed. In particular, there's a stunning coarseness and ugliness in the Republican Party today. It's upsetting, but it's also a minority of America. On the whole, we aren't like that, and we don't like that. I think that's a big part of the reason so few Americans support Donald Trump when they have to see him and that up close, and why Republicans are so worried about what's coming for them next year. We can't stop people from being jerks. What we can do is stop it from hurting us, from changing us. At my second Taylor Swift concert in Hartford, Connecticut, 14 years ago this summer, she sang a song about this topic, asking, why you gotta be so mean? And she spoke directly to the nasty people. I bet you got pushed around. Somebody made you cold. But the cycle ends right now because you can't lead me down that road.
Guys, your comments in the live chat. If you are not on the YouTube live chat right now, you got to go over there because some of these comments are so funny. I can't even read them out loud on the show. First of all, did you notice that he's actually reading his content? Like, this isn't even, it would almost be better if you thought, wow, he is just a loser who's having like verbal diarrhea and that's what he's saying. No, look at his eyes in that video. He actually pre-wrote this and was reading it. Jim Maloney, I have to read this one. Jim Maloney goes, lame and gay. Okay, a couple things. First of all, James Comey is an absolute freak. An absolute freak. At my second Taylor Swift concert 14 years ago. Dude, do the math. Do you know how old Taylor Swift was and how old James Comey was at this concert that he's referring to? Taylor Swift would have been like 19 or 20 years old, and Comey is a 50-year-old man at the time. Like, what a creeper. To be a drooling fanboy over a young girl? Ew. And yet he seems proud of this. We knew he was a weirdo and a corrupt criminal, but did you also know that he was a disgusting creep? Well, now you do. Also, Taylor Swift is not a good role model for young women. Look at her relationship choices. Look at her life choices. She is a pro-abortion, pro-LGBTQIA feminist who has run through an entire catalog of terrible Hollywood men. Not exactly who you want your daughter to emulate. Unless you're James Comey, I guess. James Comey's daughter, of course, also worked for the Department of Justice until she was recently fired after Trump took office. Here's the thing, though. All of what I just said is true. James Comey's a freak and Taylor Swift is not a good role model for young women. However, that's not the point of James Comey's video. Now, James Comey is obviously weird, but he is a little bit different than a lot of other government operators. And what I mean when I say that is a lot of government employees, even these like high-level swamp creatures, are often very dumb. I'll give you an example. Peter Strzok. Peter Strzok is not a smart person. Peter Strzok is not a strategic person. Peter Strzok is not so much with the intelligence. Let's just say that. You don't look at Peter Strzok and say, there's the mastermind of a conspiracy. You think, oh, Peter Strzok, you dumb sheep. You just follow. You were just used as a patsy by someone who wanted you to do something bad so that they could deny it. That's not the same with James Comey. James Comey is what I would call a slimy swamp operator. He knows what he's doing. And he's always thinking 2 steps ahead. It's actually how he's been able to get away with everything that he's gotten away with up until now. I'll give you an example of this. A couple months ago, you'll remember when James Comey posted on his Instagram the formation of rocks that he said he saw when he was taking a walk on the beach. Yeah, it's right there on the screen. The rocks say 8647. Now, what does 8647 mean? You know, and I know, because we're not stupid. We know that 86 means nix or kill, and 47 references President Trump, the 47th president of the United States. This is kind of a battle cry of the radical left right now. 8647, they say, because there's plausible deniability. You can just claim that you meant to vote him out of office and get rid of him. You didn't mean kill him, even though we all understand that's what the implication of 8647 is. Now, when James Comey very weirdly posted this on his Instagram, he received a lot of backlash, and rightfully so, proper backlash. We should not have the former FBI director posting this kind of camouflaged message about assassinating a former president who's already been targeted for assassination twice. But when James Comey was confronted about this, and this backlash, by the way, was not just on the right, there were even people on the left that were like, dude, what are you doing? And so he was asked about it when he made an appearance on Stephen Colbert. And this is what James Comey said. Take a listen.
Is this Instagram?
Instagram,
You
yeah.
grammed this. You were walking down the beach. What happened? You were walking down the beach, and you saw this on the beach?
Yeah, my wife and I, Patrice, were walking on the beach and saw those numbers in shells on the beach. And
You didn't do this. Somebody else did this.
Yeah, somebody else did it. We were on a walk preparing for this week,
Right.
the rollout of my book.
Yep.
She looked at it and said, why'd someone put their
Ding, ding,
address
ding.
in the sand?
All right.
And then we
8,000,
stood at it,
40,
looked at it, trying to figure out what it was. And she'd long been a server in restaurants. And she said, you know what I think it is?
Yeah.
I think it's a reference to restaurants when you would 86 something in a restaurant.
Right.
And
It's
I
off
said,
the menu.
Yeah. I said, no, I remember when I was a kid, you'd say 86 to get out of a place. This place stinks, let's 86 it.
Right. I was a bartender. You would 86 a customer if they were getting drunk. Like, let's 86 them. Let's, like, give them a low-proof alcohol, something like that. Yeah.
And so I said, I think it's a clever political message. And she said, you should take a picture of it. I said, sure. And then she said, you should Instagram that. And boom.
First of all, what a lowlife, throwing his wife under the bus like that. Ew. What a sad life that woman must have. Here's the thing. James Comey is a liar. Every word that came out of his mouth was a lie. He knows the implications of what 86 means. He was the director of the FBI. He dealt with international crime cartels. He dealt with gangs. He dealt with the most horrendous criminals. He knows the implication of 8647. Oh, I thought it was someone's address. No, he didn't. What he thinks is that you're stupid. What he thinks is that he's smarter than you. He thinks he can be so condescending to your face because you won't even get it. You're just a stupid Trump supporter. So why did he do this, though? He knew it would result in a Secret Service visit to his house because, again, he's not stupid. He doesn't care because he was the former FBI director. He knows the Secret Service isn't going to do anything because he's not actually going to take a weapon and hurt the president of the United States. So they're going to come to him and talk to him, and they're going to determine that he's not actually a threat. He's not going to be charged for a crime because there's just enough plausible deniability that what are you going to charge Comey with? He knows all this because he was the director of the FBI. So why did he do this? Well, he did this to sell his book. He did this because a week later, his book released. And the result of this horrible stunt, which brought to everyone's mind the idea of killing President Trump, because that's what 8647, that's the insinuation. He sold a lot of copies of his book and he made a lot of money off of it. And he knew all along, the second that he posted that picture, exactly what the train of events would be. He knew there'd be backlash. He knew the Secret Service would come. He knew the Department of Justice wouldn't charge him. He knew he'd be asked about it by liberal shows, and he knew he'd sell more books. So that's what, 4 or 5 steps ahead? He planned this out. And so that brings us to this weirdo Taylor Swift video. James Comey is obviously a creep, but what is he doing with this video? Because James Comey doesn't just do something. He does something as step 1 of a larger plot. So what is this step 1 of? What's step 2? What's step 3? What's the purpose of step 1? Well, James Comey is clearly trying to endear himself to the masses by latching on to the extremely widespread attention that Taylor Swift generated this past week when she went on Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce, Travis's brother. Travis Kelce is her boyfriend and her boyfriend's brother's very popular podcast. They did a very long interview. It got a lot of attention. He's clearly trying to profit off of latching on to the attention that this Taylor Swift podcast appearance generated. So first of all, sure, it's just in a sense clickbait. Maybe he is actually a creepy fan. I wouldn't put it past him. He seems pretty weird. But what's the purpose? Well, he's trying to ingratiate himself in the minds of the pop culture masses in our country, because remember what James Comey did when he was the FBI director. James Comey was present at that secret meeting that Barack Obama convened in the Situation Room at the White House on December 9th. That meeting in which all of these principals in the Trump administration, or in the Obama administration, I should say, decided to discount the intelligence community's actual assessment that Putin did not meddle on behalf of Trump in the 2016 election, nor did he even favor Trump over Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election. And instead, James Comey and Barack Obama and John Brennan and Susan Rice and Andrew McCabe and all the rest of them concocted. They manufactured a phony intelligence community assessment, and they pretended it was real. James Comey then used that phony manufactured intelligence community assessment to brief President Trump in early January. And when he briefed President Trump, funnily enough, the very next day, CNN had a story about it with all the details of what was in that phony intelligence community assessment. Now, where did CNN get that information? Well, you have to wonder if it was James Comey. James Comey knows that there are grand juries that have been convened investigating his involvement in the conspiracy against the Trump administration. And he's not stupid. This Taylor Swift video is just step 1. But the rest is yet to come. Now, President Trump, as we speak, is meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy in the White House. So far, no reports of the fisticuffs out of the Oval Office that we saw the last time, which I find to be a bit disappointing, actually. I thought it was awesome the way that President Trump took Zelenskyy to task for being such an entitled brat. My favorite moment from the first Oval Office meeting between Trump and Zelenskyy was when Trump goes, "You don't hold the cards. You don't hold the cards. We hold the cards." But this, of course, this meeting, Trump's right, by the way. Zelenskyy holds 0 cards. And I don't understand why the United States or any other nation in the world continues to give a penny of our money or our support, our military support to Zelenskyy. Stop giving him a free meal ticket, and then he won't have even a card to offer. But President Trump, all that being said, President Trump's meeting with Zelenskyy comes on the heels of President Trump's summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska over the weekend. And I do want to show a moment from that meeting with Vladimir Putin that shows 2 things. So first of all, when President Trump was walking with Putin in Alaska, unbeknownst to Putin, they suddenly experienced a flyover of U.S. military prowess. A B-2 bomber flew at very low altitude over President Trump and President Putin. And you can see the surprise on Putin's face when this happens. Take a look at this. You can see them walking down the red carpet, and suddenly at pretty low altitude, a very loud B-2 bomber in formation flies over. And you can see Vladimir Putin do the sort of continue walking forward, but also turning his body and walking backward to take a look at it. That is not the body posture of someone who was aware that this was going to happen before it happened. This might be the greatest flex of U.S. military superpower that Donald Trump has ever exercised. This is why I have such confidence in President Trump, because he knows how to handle big personalities like Vladimir Putin. He knows how to handle dictators like Vladimir Putin. Which brings us to the meeting today. The mainstream media, as they always do, has spent the last day and a half clutching their pearls. How dare Donald Trump platform Putin? Putin just walked all over Donald Trump because Putin spoke more minutes than Donald Trump did. First of all, if you are going to cry foul at the fact that Donald Trump platformed Putin by giving him a photo op with the president of the United States, then where was your outrage when these former leaders of the United States government, oh yeah, that would be Joe Biden shaking hands with Putin, and Hillary Clinton shaking hands with Putin, and Barack Obama shaking hands with Putin, and Bill Clinton shaking hands with Putin. And I don't remember any outrage from the mainstream media hacks when any Democrats, quote unquote, platformed Putin. It's funny how their outrage is directed only at President Trump. It's almost as if these are the same media hacks that propagated the lies that were invented in that secret Obama meeting where they created that phony ICA accusing President Trump of colluding somehow with Vladimir Putin. It was all a lie. So the mainstream media is acting exactly as the mainstream media always acts. But that B-2 bomber flyover tells us something about President Trump. It tells us something about this meeting that President Trump is hosting today with Zelensky in the White House. It tells us that President Trump does not just brag about being the peace president. His record proves that he is the peace president. During President Trump's first term in office, remember, he negotiated the Abraham Accords. That was unprecedented peace agreements between Israel and UAE and Bahrain and Sudan and Morocco. Something we had never even thought to think was possible in the Middle East. And President Trump got it done. He also negotiated the Doha Agreement with the Taliban. Something no president before him had been able to do to stop the forever wars in the Middle East. Fast forward to this term in office, and how many peace agreements has President Trump already brokered in what has he been in office? 7 months? 7.5 months? We have Armenia and Azerbaijan. We have Congo and Rwanda. We have Thailand and Cambodia, Israel and Iran, India and Pakistan, and reports of Egypt and Ethiopia, Serbia and Kosovo. Countries that the left can't even pronounce the names. They're not even aware that these peace agreements have happened because they just hate Trump so much. They don't care that people are safer around the world thanks to President Trump, the peace president. So going into this meeting today between President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky, do I have confidence in President Trump? You bet I have confidence in President Trump. He promised on the campaign trail that he would broker a deal and end the war between Russia and Ukraine. And no, it didn't happen on the first day in office because Zelensky and Putin are worse people and Congress are worse people than anticipated. But is President Trump going to end that war? 100%. And if we happen to get the best television on earth like we did in February with that public negotiation, this is the thing about President Trump, right? If you think back to the administration of any other president, Biden, Obama, Bush before him, Clinton, Reagan, could you describe the negotiation techniques of any of those presidents? Well, no, we can't, because we never actually saw negotiation in action, with the exception of perhaps Ronald Reagan when he publicly said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Other than that, We had no idea how Barack Obama actually acted in any negotiation with a foreign nation. We know he was weak because we saw a bad outcome, but we don't know how he behaved or what he said. But President Trump has given us the confidence of knowing how he behaves and what he says, and therefore we understand that he is better at negotiation than any of these fools. He's better than Putin. He's better than Zelensky. He's better than all the European leaders. He's better than Trudeau in Canada. He holds the cards. And he doesn't just hold the cards, he knows how to use them. And mark my words, that's what we are going to find out in the hours to come about what's unfolding in the White House right now. Did you hear that MSNBC has renamed themselves? Yeah, let's talk about that for a moment. But first, a quick message from Blaze TV. Starting this coming Sunday, Blaze TV is launching a new series called Sunday Revival. New episodes will be available every Sunday morning for Blaze TV subscribers. Tune in each week, after you attend Mass. Regardless of what's happening in our chaotic world, Sunday Revival is an attempt to stay grounded in God's word. Tune in on Sunday on Blaze TV for a new series called Sunday Revival. BlazeTV.com/Liz. Okay, MSNBC, big news in the media front. MSNBC, now you might have been hoping that they were shuttering, that they were closing their doors, that they were going off the airwaves, but no. This is much worse. They are renaming themselves. They're rebranding. Instead of MSNBC, do you think President Trump, by the way, is responsible for this? Because he called them, what did he call them? MSDNC? Well, they can't stand being mocked by President Trump, even though that's exactly what they are, MSDNC. They have renamed themselves MS Now. MS Now. Now, what's your first reaction when you see this name? MS Now. Multiple sclerosis now is what came to my mind when I first saw this name. I thought, did they not put this in front of anybody to see if these initials were associated with any other acronym? Because most people, when they see MS, they think multiple sclerosis or maybe manuscript. That's probably more just in the news, media, English, literature world. MS Now, they're going to call themselves. And get this is what they want it to stand for. It actually is an acronym. By the way, the acronym is not just MS. NOW is also an acronym. Are you ready for this? My source for news, opinion, and the world. My source for news, opinion, and the world. I remember in elementary school when we were learning English and grammar. One of the things that we were told in this literally, this was grammar school, very early grades. We were told when you write a series of things like news, opinion, in the world, you need to make sure that each individual word correlates with the beginning of the sentence. So you would do that by scratching out the other two words and making sure that it matches. So my source for news. Okay, that makes sense. My source for opinion. That makes sense. My source for the world? What? That doesn't make any sense. But MS Now is going to be your expert for all things everywhere, apparently. Maybe a more accurate acronym would be more stupidity now, because that's what it seems like is coming from MSNBC. If someone had asked me, and of course they did not, but if someone had asked me what kind of acronym I thought would be suitable for MSNBC, I think we should give them a lot more letters. I think that they should not just be MSNBC or MSDNC. I think they should be like LCPDMC, liars, cheaters, propagandists, Democratic mouthpiece communists. Let's just accurately describe who these people are. I don't know why they changed their name. I actually think they changed it because they're sensitive to Trump calling them MSDNC. But MS Now is what they're called. My source for the world. It just makes no sense. It just makes no sense. All right. Make sure you guys are subscribed. Please go over to Spotify, search The Liz Wheeler Show, hit subscribe. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. On X, make sure that you're following, and make sure that you have your notifications set on any platform where you follow, because we will be going live at 1 p.m. Eastern, per usual, tomorrow same time, same place. Thank you for sitting here and live streaming with us. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show.